name is Attorney Coral Plez, and I am the host of this show. Thank you for joining us this morning. The show is sponsored by Columbia Savings and Loan, which is located at 2020 West Fond du Lac Avenue, right here in Milwaukee. Last week, we were fortunate enough to have one of the board of directors from the bank on the radio show, along with the vice president of the bank. So it was good to have them here last week. Today, we're going to shift gears a little bit and talk about a different topic. So the topic for today is going to start today, but we'll probably spend a few weeks talking about the topic that I'm on because it's a broad topic, the importance of having an estate plan. And today we are specifically going to talk about matters that pertain to guardianships. What is a guardianship? We're going to discuss that today. Different types of guardianship, why there might be a need for a guardianship. So, just to put this into context, probably a lot of the audience that's listening in this morning may have seen the documentary this past weekend concerning Wendy Williams, which is one of the reasons that I thought to kind of segue and start to talk about the topic of estate planning. I don't know if how many people have seen it, but it was a really interesting, in a lot of ways, a lot of reasons, it was really kind of a sad situation to watch. I believe it was on Lifetime this past weekend, Saturday, as well as Sunday. I'm not necessarily a big fan of Wendy Williams or Wendy Williams' show when it was on, but I respect what she built. She was a self-built person, a self-made multi millionaire. And from some of the reading that I've done, I look things up online. So, you take the information with a grain of salt. But from what I read at one point, Wendy Williams had built a fortune that was worth about $40 million, that she was worth about $40 million. So that's a lot of money. So one of the things that I wanted to talk about a little bit about what has happened to Wendy Williams, and I'm going to invite people to call in and offer commentary and their opinions. If they saw it or even if they didn't see it, you may form an opinion just based on what we're talking about here today. But just to point out why, like, what does this have to do with estate planning, or what does this have to do specifically with guardianship? Why speak on this? Well, because that's what actually happened to Wendy Williams. And I think that was the name of the documentary, Where's Wendy Williams, or What Happened to Wendy Williams, something to that effect. It was one of those two. And what happened to Wendy Williams was that she became subject to a court order that basically directed another person or entity to be in charge of her life. Um, there's two different types of guardianships: the guardian of a person and the guardian of an estate. So, one of the things that we're going to talk about a little bit this morning is what's the difference between those two and what this has to do with Wendy. So, I'm using Wendy just kind of as a case study, as an example of what this means and how this plays out. But it's interesting. One of the comments that Wendy made early on in her docu-series was that she said, if this could happen to me, it could happen to you. So that's why it's important. This can happen to someone rich and famous, or it could happen to, the everyday person. It might be a good thing, it might not be a good thing. But at the end of the day, guardianships and talking about this with respect to an estate plan is about protecting your money. It's about protecting your assets. It's about protecting what you've worked hard to build. So I'm going to just talk a little bit about what happened generally in Wendy's case, okay? I don't have specific details about it. I don't think anyone does, because quite honestly, the courts in New York is where she was residing. And so that's where the court action for guardianship against her was filed. And the judge, and rightfully so, sealed that case. So you can't access it publicly. And part of the reason that that's done is because there is medical information that is confidential information that becomes a part of those particular case files. And so, and again, because who she is and just allowing, privacy, the public would want to scrutinize it. And the case was sealed. So no one other than the people that are directly involved have all of the information. But the docu-series that came on this weekend shared some of the basic facts that I feel comfortable, talking about here now, and we'll invite the audience to call in. In fact, let me just give the number. So if people want to call in with questions or with comments, the number here is 414-444-5250. That is 414-444-5250. Okay. So we'll look forward to your comments or questions coming in with respect to this. Whether you saw the docu-series or whether you didn't, you might have an opinion. But basically, Wendy Williams had given power of attorney to handle her financial matters to her college-aged son. Now, I don't know exactly how old he was when she did that. Let's say maybe around 20. I think he's 23 now. So he was probably 19 or 20 years old. Wendy was fresh out of her marriage. So she was recently divorced. This was her only child. And he was an adult legally, right? Because he was over 18, but he still was a very young person to hand power of attorney, meaning that he could access her money and utilize her money as though she were the person doing it herself.
That's a lot to give to someone of that age when you start talking everything you've worked for. Because I think, in watching how her show was progressing and so forth, and we kind of fell apart before our eyes.
Right.
And so we saw things start to happen with her where she would disappear from the show for a period of time and things of that nature, to where we knew something was going on. But to give that kind of access, if you will be the word I'll use.
That's the right word.
To a kid. I mean, and he may be grown, but he's a kid in my
He's a
eyes.
kid. He's a
Yeah.
kid. Thank you, Debo. I couldn't agree with you more. He's a kid, and he was probably a spoiled rich kid, right? I mean,
Right.
he was Wendy Williams' only
It's not like
son.
he had to get permission to do anything because he's power of attorney.
Right. Right. And um so some of the expenses, some of the things that he did with her power of attorney, he apparently had a birthday party for himself and spent $120,000 on a birthday party. So, he's this college kid in Miami, partying with his friends and so forth.
And I'm sure he had a lot of new friends.
Oh yeah, no doubt about it. No doubt about it. Because another thing that they mentioned on the docu-series was that he spent $100,000 on Uber Eats. Right? So that was another one that I was surprised by. At first I thought it was 80, but no, I checked back in my notes. It was $100,000 Uber Eats. And he paid about $80,000 for his rent. So this young person, and I'm not even suggesting that he had ill intent, but he was just too young to be able to be responsible for that amount of money. Okay, so it looks like we have a caller that's calling in. Go ahead, caller.
I watched some of that docu series, and it's such a sad thing. But people have parents that could, you see that they're getting what is this Alzheimer's, and they have money, they own property, and all that. But we used to have this thing called a brown bag lunch, uh, where they would have people come in and talk to us, and they had a trust attorney come in. And
Okay.
this one trust attorney, what he did was, it was a learning experience. He gave us an example of, he made it so that, okay, if he would have died, if he's still alive, his kids would have access to his money. So, not knowing that they would misuse that, one of the sons went and had a house built and went into that trust and got some of the money out. well, the father was notified about it, and and that was the thing. Isn't it more complicated where you can design these things a certain way where if you die, it's a dual thing. Okay, before you die, it's there. After you die, then the kids have access to whatever it is that they're doing. But with Wendy Williams' kid, it looked like they could have had a family member or a friend that could advise him to go to an attorney. Some of that money Wendy should have probably set out there for his college education that was split from her money. So once you blow through all this, then you through, brother. Then now this is about getting an endowment in case you get married, in case you want to build something once you get yourself situated. But now, my understanding, when you don't do these things, the court will appoint somebody.
Well, they certainly can, and they certainly did in this case. That's not necessarily the case in every instance because before, and we'll talk about it a little bit.
And I have one other question. One other question, and I'm gonna get on.
No, no, go ahead.
Uh, when the court appoints, now I watch a lot of TV shows too, and when you do the point of it, who's watching them and how they spend your money and pay bills that you. Now he's still alive,
Right.
so her care has to be taken care of. So that's why I'm saying I didn't understand her son having full range of everything. It should have been split up.
Right.
So he would have his money to live on, and somebody would be talking to him. What are we doing as families that we're not helping each other out? But this is a good topic, and it's important
Yes.
because, and the same thing, and I hope you get on life insurance too one of these times too.
Oh,
Thank you. Have a
yes.
good day.
No, thank you. Thank you. Absolutely. I understand the point. And there's a difference between having power of attorney, which is my understanding of what Wendy granted her son power of attorney to handle her money, her finances, her business matters to an extent. There's a difference between that and the guardianship. The guardianship is a court order. So a guardianship can trump and crush a power of attorney, which is what I understand happened in this case. So, unfortunately, this very young person who um, wasn't financially sophisticated yet. Let's just, I want to give him the benefit of the doubt because he struck me in the documentary as a nice kid. I mean, he struck me as a nice young man that loves his mother, but that doesn't mean that at the age of 20 or 19 that he's ready to be in charge of a $40 million fortune. So Wendy Williams had at least some of her money in one particular banking institution that the son was transacting from a particular account. And the bank saw these transactions like that I just mentioned, the $120,000 policy, the $100,000 Uber Eats. I don't even know how you do $100,000 with Uber Eats. Like, who was he feeding? The whole college campus? I mean, I don't know. But in any event, the bank saw this and flagged it. So banks will look at transactions that are substantial, as these were, and they can flag that for an investigation and say, hey, wait a minute. Why is there, $100,000 coming out of this account for Uber Eats? Why is there $120,000 that was spent, on a party? So they flagged the account from what I understand. And then the bank felt that there was a strong reason to believe that Wendy Williams was the victim of undue influence and financial exploitation. Those were the exact words. So in February 2022, the bank referred and initiated a court filing that would basically say that someone other than this person who's making these large financial maneuvers, someone other than this person needs to step in and be responsible for this money. And it was done out of a notion of protecting her and protecting her finances. So the bank froze her accounts with the allegation that someone close to her was being nefarious. So that's a a big and unpleasant word to call it, but that was the word that they used. So they basically filed a petition with the court to keep her away from her own money, or which did keep her away from her own money, I should say. But the initial goal behind it anyway was to stop others, anyone else, from taking advantage of her and her financial situation. So, um, with that being said, the bank made that filing, and then let's see when it was. It only took a few months um, to for the court to go ahead and say yes. Um, we're going to order that Wendy Williams needs to have a guardian, not only as relates to her finances, but also to have a guardian as relates to her health. So that's a separate consideration. So by May of 2022, the court had decided to appoint a third party to serve as her guardian. And I don't know whether it was one person or two people or maybe even an entity, but there are others other than her family that are responsible now to have guardianship over herself, meaning her person, um, and guardianship over her finances. Now, there's it's interesting because there is a strong preference in the law for the person who's appointed guardian to be a family member. But if the court, in its discretion, determines that that's not the best course of action to take, which apparently the court made that determination in this case. I'm not sure why, because again, the record's sealed. Um, but according to the judge, they de- deemed it best to appoint a guardian, someone outside of the family, to basically be in charge of this adult person. And the thing about these guardianship cases, they can be reviewed annually, but it's not easy to get in and turn this thing around. So I think I said a little bit earlier that Wendy herself had made this comment that if this could happen to me, it could happen to you. So, with that being said, and kind of in keeping with some of the points that the caller just brought up, what might she have done differently? And even, that Debo brought up. Um, she granted this authority to this young person, a college kid. Um, the other thing that may have played into this, and these are just my thoughts, so I'm going to invite the callers to call in with your thoughts and your opinions here too. Just interested to hear the perspective of people, but I can't help but also believe that since Wendy went through a very public, very bitter, very difficult divorce, the gentleman that she was once married to, I believe, was her manager, and he also was an executive over her show, the Wendy Williams Show. And during the process of their divorce, she let him go. So he no longer had the substantial income that he made from her show. And as the public may well know, that he was involved in an extramarital affair and had a child with this other woman. So he was on, living his life. The divorce was finalized, but there was a stipulation in the divorce decree that basically said that if Wendy ever stopped earning at the level that she had been earning on the Wendy Williams show, that she would no longer have an obligation to pay spousal support to her ex-husband. So it is significant then, um, that she eventually lost her show, because then that meant that she no longer had to pay this spousal support to her ex husband. And from what I understand, he petitioned the court for a review of that order and tried to challenge it and overcome it. But the judge stood firm and just basically said, you read it, you signed it, I ordered it. So now you don't like it, but, I'm not going to change it. So this gentleman fell on some pretty dire straits from what I have read. And but he still, even though it no longer had a good relationship with Wendy, he still had a relationship with his son, And so I think part of the concern was that the son might take some of the money in order to help his father. So that's just my thought about one of the reasons why I think the court stripped him of his power of attorney and took and eventually ordered guardianship and put it in the hands of another person. So it looks like there's another caller that's on hold here for us. Is that the case? Nope. Okay, I'm mistaken. All right, so I am going to invite people to call in. There's more to talk about with all of this, but the number for the show is 414-444-5250. That's 414-444-5250. Please give us a call with your comments, okay? We're going to go to break and come back. We'll talk a little more details about my thoughts of maybe what Wendy could have considered to have done differently with respect to an estate plan.
Born September 17, 1946, Velma Coggs understood the assignment. Raised by parents that believed everyone had a role in the work to uplift and empower the Black community, this Milwaukee native carved out her path early in life. With a passion for the arts, Velma honed her skills in both music, visual art, set and stage production design. While a student in both middle and high school, she immersed herself in the fight for civil rights. She joined the NAACP Youth Council and served at both the local and national level. Protesting discriminatory busing practices and housing discrimination, Velma would work on an array of civil rights issues over the years. Her many passions informed her decision to become an art educator, graphic designer, and pre-press production artist for the Milwaukee Courier newspaper. Today, we honor Velma Coggs for her many contributions to Black media. This is our history. Let's celebrate Black history in Milwaukee.
This moment in Black history was brought to you by Wisconsin Black Chamber of Commerce.
It's Black History Month, a time to recognize and celebrate the achievements and progress of Black people. We honor and acknowledge where we came from, we celebrate and appreciate where we are now, and we commit to continue to make history as we move forward. Here at the Wisconsin Black Chamber of Commerce, we want to make history by making Black people the largest employer of Black people. Let's make history together. Congratulations on a history full of determination, motivation, and accomplishment. This is not just a month of recognition, but a time to plan to continue to create legacy and make change in our Black communities.
This is Martina Golan-Graves, President and CEO with Mental Health America of Wisconsin. I want to take a moment to remind you that your mental health matters. This time of year can be stressful, but we have programs and services committed to supporting our community. We are a nonprofit organization dedicated to helping adults and kids live mentally healthier lives. We offer online screenings, outpatient therapy, and a peer-run warm line for support day and night. Call us today, 414-276-3122, or visit mhawisconsin.org to learn more about these services and more.
Do you love winning? This February, head to Potawatomi Casino Hotel Milwaukee and fall head over heels with the Love It or Leave It $400,000 game show. Thursday nights, you could play the Love It or Leave It game show where you can love your prize or leave it for another. Play with your club card to earn drawing entries. Top prize is $10,000 in cash. It's time for Love It or Leave It. Only at Potawatomi. Learn more at paysbig.com. Must be 21 years old and a club member to play.
Hi, my name is Tamika Vukovic, Co-Executive Director of Wisconsin Voices. Please join Wisconsin Voices every Monday, Tuesday, and Friday. We will be focusing on community partnerships, voter education, and long-term collective impact for all Wisconsinites.
You're listening to WNOV 860 and W293CX 106.5 Milwaukee.
Okay, welcome back. Welcome back to Money Talks with Attorney Coral, sponsored by Columbia Savings and Loan. Today, we're talking about estate plans. We're talking most specifically today about guardianships with respect to the situation with Wendy Williams. Um, 414-444-5250 is the number if you have any questions or any comments that you would like to make concerning this situation. What I wanted to offer is just some thoughts that I had about maybe how Wendy could have done things a little bit differently with respect to planning her estate. Um, First and foremost, it's best to make decisions before you get into any circumstance where there might be some sort of mental impairment. You need to handle these types of matters while you are of sound mind. One of the things that I thought about that she might have considered to have done differently, buy a property for this young man so he's not spending $100,000 paying rent someplace. Establish a trust for him. And the caller that called in earlier talked about a brown bag lunch, and they had an attorney come and talk about trust agreements. And what does that mean? A trust is basically an arrangement that allows a third party, that person is considered a trustee, to hold assets on behalf of a beneficiary. So in a situation like this, you create a trust for a young man, allow a trustee to oversee it, someone you trust and know that's responsible, and put him on an allowance. And then you could hold the money in a trust or the assets in a trust until maybe he's 30 years old, and then you grant him access. But when you just unleash millions of dollars to the hands of a very young person, that is asking for trouble. That itself could be a recipe for disaster. Another thing that she might have considered with respect to her own finances is, again, in the event of her own incapacity, she could have created documents that would have allowed maybe her niece, who seemed like a very responsible person, and her sister, who seemed like an equally responsible person, to be able to take over in the event that that Wendy wasn't able to take care of her own needs. So someone's holding. So thank you, caller. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Good afternoon, and thank you so much for the show today. I just have a quick question. Trying to walk away from the radio. We've got so much feedback.
Oh, thank you.
Okay. I don't know why it is. Real.
Oh, caller, I think we lost you. So if you don't mind, give us a call back. I'll keep going forward with things, but we'd love for you to call back in. Somehow you got disconnected. The number is 414-444-5250. That's 414-444-5250. Go ahead and give us a call back when you have a chance. I would like to know what your thoughts are. And Debo, what are your thoughts? I mean, Wendy, it was a grown adult woman who was basically stripped of all of her rights to make decisions about her own life. And I was doing some reading, and one of the attorneys that works in the area of trust in the States said that a guardianship of an adult is like the equivalent of a civil death. I thought that was some strong language, but
Wow.
yeah. So I let the magnitude of that just kind of settle on me, that if you worked hard and you created this wealth, you created this fortune, but you no longer have the right to go to the bank and transact anything. What are your thoughts about
Well,
something
my
like
thoughts
that?
would start more so with a question for you as an attorney. Power of attorney, what does it mean? I get it that, if this person becomes incapacitated or what have you and can't speak for themselves, you have the ability to conduct their business. Is that pretty much what it means?
It is, but it also can be a little bit less than that, because you could still be, let's say, for instance, I'm, a person of sound mind and capable to make my decisions.
That's a matter of opinion, though, right?
Well, I hope so.
All right, go right ahead.
It's
You were
my
saying.
opinion anyway.
Right.
You got me there. But I can draft a power of attorney right now and put you on there, and I can grant you authority to go and transact deals on my behalf, buy real estate, sell it, so on and so forth. But because I'm yet of sound mind, that's my opinion, that I could always just pull it back. I could always revoke it. I could always say, okay, I no longer want to grant you this authority. And it also wouldn't stop me from going and making my own transactions. So that's one thing.
But let me ask you a question, because there was a scenario that I know of personally and I kind of watched it play out. There was an individual who granted power of attorney, thought they were going to die or what have you, were having some medical issues or what have you, just trying to put their business in order, so to speak. Well, they got better. They found out that there was some other things going on as to why they were sick. And they decided they wanted to pull that back. And they caught the biggest hell, if you will, trying to pull that back. Because, I mean, do you have to prove that you're of sound mind now, or what happens?
Well, only if the person that you granted it to would try to challenge it in court.
Okay.
You know, then that's where the issues of proof come in. But in theory,
So you've got to be really careful, if you will, of who you grant this kind of power to.
absolutely, that's exactly the point.
Because they can fight it.
Right.
Wow.
Right. But in theory, a power of attorney is something that, as long as, again, you're of sound mind, you can revoke at any time that you determine. And it doesn't stop you from transacting your own deals if that's what you still would like to do. Sometimes people will grant a power of attorney and they specifically say it's for this limited purpose. This person is granted authority to sign on my behalf for this limited transaction. Maybe I'm not available to be there and I want to grant power of attorney.
So you can put a timeline on it?
Yeah, you can. You absolutely can. Now, some people don't, you know, and the other thing with a power of attorney is while you can and you should only create these documents, right, like this, when you're of sound mind, to know what you're signing or creating. But you can put a clause in there that says that, okay, I'm granting this person power of attorney, but it does not become active until either one physician declares in writing that I'm incompetent and they have examined me personally, not just my records, not just what someone else said, but they have laid eyes and hands on me to know that I'm not competent, and they have to put that in writing and sign their name to it. Or it's either that or a physician and like a psychotherapist, someone who's specifically equipped to evaluate a person's mental state. And they are willing to put that in writing and say this person no longer can make these decisions. So if you draft a power of attorney and you're saying, I'm sound of mind now, but if anything ever happens that I'm not, this is who I want to step in and take over my business matters.
Can that be challenged? Let's say we're siblings and we share the same mom, and mom makes me, but then you didn't know it. But when you find out, can you challenge that?
You always can challenge things, but does it make sense? Is there really a reason? You know, are you going to go and hire some lawyer and spend a whole lot of money just to not be able to break it? Let's say, for instance, one reason to challenge it might be if I say, okay, Mom, why did you make Debo, you know, the power of attorney, you know, instead of me? And she says, hey, I'm of sound mind. I can make it to whomever I want to make it, and I choose him and I don't choose you. And then that's, I mean, you know, that doesn't help me in court, right? That doesn't help me.
Right.
But what if she's infirm? What if mentally, you know, you had her sign this 5 minutes ago, and then I come over now 5 minutes later and she says, Debo, who? I don't remember signing that. So if she's infirm, if she has some challenges, then I can say, okay, that's something I can go to court on and try to dispute this. So you can always fight something, but are you going to win? I don't know. It just depends on the facts. So you look at a situation like that.
Okay.
Yeah. So the flip side of all of this, where we talked about, you know, the magnitude of what that means to take away your access to your own money. The flip side of it is that sometimes it can be necessary.
So in essence, when you do that, you're actually locking yourself out of your own business situations or what have you. Because that's what I saw happen with this other person. Then when they tried to come back, it was like, yeah, they never got it back either,
right,
for the record.
And that's unfortunate in that situation, especially if they got better. But yes, that's really what kind of happened here in my assessment of what happened with Wendy Williams, because now she is still locked out of her own finances. And for those who may have seen the documentary, you know, it's I hate to say it like this, but it's easy to understand why she appears, even from a layperson standpoint, to not be with it. cognitively
Right.
enough to, make these decisions for
And
herself.
even something that I saw in regards to her, she's like in the early stages of dementia.
Dementia,
Yeah.
yes, that has been mentioned. Dementia, aphasia, all those things. Maybe if the audience might be familiar with the diagnosis that I believe Bruce Willis has. He's a big action star for
Hmm.
so long, and he's not very elderly either. I
Right.
don't know
And
how
they
old
did
he is,
mention
but
that she had basically the same thing as Bruce. It was
exactly,
kind of mentioned that in that
exactly.
same way. Yes.
Yeah. So I thought it was interesting, though, at the very end of the documentary, her family was commenting, though, that yes, she's been in this like a rehab facility
Hmm.
for many months now, and they are taking away some of the alcohol that was unfortunately toxic to
Right.
her
Right.
brain.
Right.
And she's not having access to the drugs that unfortunately,
Right.
apparently, she herself has admitted that she's used for many, many years.
Hmm.
That they are suggesting that she's coming to a point now where there might be more clarity in her thinking. I
Hmm.
mean, I hope that that's the case. But if the diagnosis that's being discussed publicly now, with respect to her, those are not curable situations, and
Right.
they continue to deteriorate over
Hmm.
time. So I don't know which is true. I don't
Right.
know. I don't know.
And I guess I'm certain that we're not trying to limit this to Wendy. There could be folks that are actually out there going through this same thing. So I totally get why you would want to do something like this today.
Right.
I can appreciate the content.
Right, right, right. Yep. Wendy is just unfortunately a case study,
Right.
for purposes of today's discussion. But these are the sorts of things
She's
that,
she's a celebrity, so therefore,
right,
us everyday people don't. Some of us go through some of the same things. So yeah.
right, right. Absolutely, absolutely. So yes, the guardianship is not necessarily an evil thing. It might be just what a
Hmm.
person needs in order to safeguard their health and their well-being, and to protect their money. It would certainly seem to me, and again, this is a lay analysis. I wasn't in court. I haven't seen this particular person's medical chart, but it just does appear that there's something not right, with the thinking. So the worst thing you can do is just stand back sometimes and just do nothing, and have a situation where someone is spiraling and they need help, but they're not getting help, and another person comes and squanders their fortune. If in fact Wendy or any others, that have these types of debilitating medical conditions are going to need money in order for their self-care. So you don't want to have a situation where finances get squandered. Give us a call with your thoughts at 414-444-5250. That's 414-444-5250. So one of the things that I wanted to just talk a little more about, since we were talking about power of attorney, I wanted to talk about a little bit how that differs from a guardianship. So power of attorney is again something that I can grant, to you, Debo. Hey, I want my brother Debo to take over control of my finances and so forth, and either for a period of time or either indefinitely or either not until I am incapacitated, and then he can take these over. So I can grant that to you myself, and I can, at least in theory, revoke it myself. But a guardianship is another matter, because a guardianship means that a petition got filed with a court of law, and that a judge reviewed things, and a judge decided that I should no longer have control of my
So in
finances.
essence, that guardianship is something that's granted by the court.
Exactly. A guardianship requires a court order. So it's bigger and it's more powerful than a power of attorney, because a judge has the authority, and the discretion to shoot down or
But
to,
what kinds of things would he use to make that determination? Though, is that medical, doctors? What would make guardianship be something that would be ordered? What
well,
causes that?
funny that you say that, because that is actually one of the things that I wanted to talk about, because the law is, very specific on the criteria that a
Mhm.
judge has to evaluate before they can make a finding of, someone to have a need for a guardian to be appointed.
Mhm.
There's standards, right, for the appointment of a guardian. And one of the things that the court has to consider, this is really basic, but they have to consider the age of the person, because we're talking today about adult guardianships. The guardianship of a child is another matter, and that's, not part of the topic for purposes of today's discussion, since we're talking about estate planning. So that's a separate matter, separate proceedings, separate standards. So they look at the age. You must be an adult. I think in Wisconsin, the jurisdiction, they allow you to file it if the person is at least 17 years and 9 months of age, but legally you're not an adult until you're 18. But age is the first factor of consideration. The second factor of consideration to determine whether or not there should be a guardian appointed for a person is the presence of an impairment, right? They have to find that there's something wrong. So, what is an impairment? An impairment is a developmental disability, right? That can be an impairment, a serious and persistent mental illness, a degenerative brain disorder, or other like incapacities. Because again, one of the things that must happen in a guardianship case is a doctor or a psychotherapist, someone with the proper credentials to analyze this person from a medical standpoint and make a thorough investigation and a recommendation to the court whether or not they think this person has the capacity to make decisions for themselves, whether or not they're mentally capable to handle their own life choices as relates to their health, as relates to their safety, and as relates to their finances. So let's say a court gets a report from a professional that says, I have examined this person, and yes, to a reasonable degree of medical certainty, I'm telling you that it is my opinion, based upon my professional expertise, that this person lacks the capacity to make their own decisions. So that is a very important criteria that a judge has to consider before they make the determination to take someone's rights away. Um, Another factor that is considered is the risk of harm um, to this person. So, is this person going to go out and do something harmful to themselves? Are they going to allow something harmful to happen to themselves? Safety is paramount. So, right, so that's one of the huge factors that a judge will consider before they determine whether or not to appoint a guardianship. Another thing that a court will consider is whether or not there's any less restrictive alternative that they can allow for this individual under the circumstances. But if not, in that person's best interest, the court has evaluated all of these factors, they can order that there be a guardian appointed. Now, from my experience, with respect to guardianships, I just want to make sure that I delineate this and say that there's two different types of adult guardianships. There is the guardianship of the person, and then there's the guardianship of the estate. So a guardianship of the person, again, relates to health. It relates to, medical. It relates to safety. The guardianship of the estate relates to the money. That's about the money. Um, there are certain things that are positive about having a guardianship. So if a court evaluating these factors determines that a guardianship is something appropriate, some of the good, positive, functional purposes of a guardianship are that the guardian will be able to make decisions that the person is unable to make for himself or herself, and to give consent for things that that person might not be able to give. And again, in the Wendy case, one of the things was the guardian for the healthcare was scheduling very necessary medical appointments that she needed to attend and making sure that she would attend those appointments. That's something in the long run, would be in her best interest. So it's good that you can have that, so that if the person isn't in a position themselves to say, I'm going to go ahead and go to this medical appointment, if they're going to sit there, as some people might, and not go to the appointments, or, overuse alcohol or whatever the case may be, there's someone to step in and basically say, hey, I'm going to make this decision for you, and you are going to see this doctor, because I believe that's what's in your best interest. So, exercising rights on behalf of an adult, if that adult is unable to exercise for himself or herself, um, acting as an advocate for that adult's best interests, taking action to protect that adult from abuse, neglect, even self neglect, financial exploitation, violation of rights. Those are all positives, that relate to the notion of having a guardian appointed. There's also negatives, to the notion of having a guardian appointed. And the word that I'm using for it is that I can imagine in, some circumstances that it would feel dehumanizing, because basically the court is saying you're not fit to make your own decisions, and it puts someone else in charge of you. That has to be a difficult, painful experience if you're cognizant enough, if you're aware of what's going on. Some people maybe even aren't aware, because this could come up if, it doesn't have to be, mental impairment or something like we've been talking about about Wendy. As Debo pointed out, like this relates to, the general public. Let's say if there's an adult that's in, um, a car accident and they sustain brain damage, um, and the family, might need to step up and have guardianship of that particular person, because they're not capable to make decisions if they've sustained, a certain level of severity of neurological damage or brain damage. Perhaps they can't make that decision for themselves. Another way that I've seen this come up during my years of practice is, an adult will have a child that perhaps has some level of developmental disability where they're not able to make decisions for themselves. But as long as they're a minor, the parents have authority and they can make decisions for their child. Well, what happens when that child reaches the age of 18 and they still have, lifelong, disabilities that prohibit them from making, choices for themselves? They can't live on their own. They maybe don't know, there's just cognitively they're disabled and they're not able to, function. Well, you bring a doctor in. A doctor will sit, and I've participated in some of these examinations to see how it goes, and they'll ask them things like, do you know what year it is? Do you know who the president is? Do you know what city you're in? If they're able to communicate with this person, they might ask them, okay, if you get on a bus and you ride downtown to 3rd and Wisconsin Avenue, how would you get back home? What route might you take? And if they're not able to answer these sorts of questions, then that's when the medical professional who's evaluating will, write in their report, yes, I recommend guardianship. Yes, I recommend this person's mom or dad that's cared for them their whole life. You wouldn't think that a parent would have to go and do that with an adult child, but once you turn 18, you're an adult. So if that parent knows that this child of theirs has special needs that will be with them throughout their life, they cannot live on their own, they cannot work outside the home, and you know that you are that person's caretaker, you still have to go through the court process, in order to have that granted. So, looks like we are, due for a break. Thank you so much. You're listening to Money Talks with Attorney Coral. That is sponsored by Columbia Savings and Loan. I'll be back with you in a moment with some final thoughts. Please feel free to call us at 414-444-5250. Thank you.
Easter and prom is here, and graduation is near. Stop by Nick Avani's, where they have a large variety of suits, blazers, and shoes to get you right for that special day. You already know Nick Avani has the $100 hookup. You can get a suit, shirt, tie, and shoes, all for just $100. They're open 7 days a week with an on-site tailor. Nick Avani's on the second floor of the Mayfair Mall across from the movie theater. It's the place to shop for men.
Hi there, I'm Deslyn Smith, the Executive Director of United Garden Homes Incorporated, the proud sponsor of the Nayumbu Opendo Show, broadcasting on WNOV on Wednesdays at 11 a.m. Poverty, illicit behaviors, drug abuse, and addiction have been affecting the quality of life for decades, not only in the Garden Homes neighborhood, but within disenfranchised communities throughout our country. United Garden Homes Incorporated is a neighborhood association-based, nonprofit organization committed to supporting individuals and families to see beyond their current situation by way of education in mental health, substance misuse, and violence prevention, as well as with the utilization of resource advocacy to empower and promote healing in our community. For more information, contact United Garden Homes Incorporated at 414-554-5538 or via email at info@ughinc.org.
Urban Vibes, community conversation where we all have a seat at the table. Join the conversation every first Friday from 7 a.m. to 9 a.m. with me, Karen Dotson, from the All of Us Research Program at the Medical College of Wisconsin. We will discuss health issues affecting Black and Brown communities and share how health research can help find solutions in the future. Learn from special guests each month, and please join us at the table for real conversation every first Friday, 7 a.m. to 9 a.m. at 860 WNOV and 106.5 FM.
For one night only, Saturday, March 9th, the Marcus Performing Arts Center presents Hubbard Street Dance Company. Over the last 46 years, Hubbard Street Dance Company has been one of the most original forces in contemporary dance, bringing top choreographers and works to Chicago and beyond. Hubbard Street's ever-evolving repertoire, created by today's leading choreographic voices, introduces audiences to original, cutting-edge contemporary dance. Their mission is to bring artists, art, and audiences together to enrich, engage, educate, and change lives through the experience of dance. March 9th at 7:30 p.m. Tickets and information available at marcuscenter.org.
2024 Soul Stirring Gospel Easter Band, March 31st, sponsored by the New Pitts Mortuary, located at 2031 West on Capitol Drive. Pick your tickets at 45 in advance, 50 at the door. On my way home, the Captain Spirituals. Oh, the gospel for he's blessing me. I feel it in my feet right now. Baby, you better meet me there. Brunch at 1, the show begins at 4 p.m. The fabulous Lucky Brothers, my soul is a witness. I feel it down on the inside. Be right there at Abundant Faith, located at 7830 West Good Hope Road. Oh, Willie Rogers, we're going to a meeting on that day. I see them marching down the street. Come on in from everywhere, northwest, south. Oh, it's going down. There's a leak in this old building, Bishop Neil Robeson, and my soul has got to move. Don't you miss it. Call the New Pitts Mortuary 414-447-6000. It's going down at the Soul Stirring Gospel Easter Bash. Oh, I gotta stop right there, Brian. Back in top, my feet got light. I feel myself flying right about now. Come on now, you don't want to miss it. Be right there in the house. It's going down. Come on now, Tiffany Jerry. Everybody know he's my friend. Oh, you don't want to miss it. You be right there. That Soul Stirring Gospel Easter Bash. That food is going to be yummy, yummy, yummy. I'll tell you, come on now, Reverend R.L. Bush and the Revived Sons. Put the weight on me. Oh, not that kind of weight, because that food gonna be so strong. Just pick your chickens up at the New Pitts Mortuary.
Okay, welcome back. Money Talks with Attorney Coral, sponsored by Columbia Savings and Loan. We have a caller that I think might have been disconnected earlier. Go ahead, caller.
Hi, thank you so much for taking my call. Two quick questions. Power of attorney. When that person passes away, the power of attorney is no longer valid. That's a question.
And the answer is yes, it is no longer valid. A power of attorney does not survive death. Go ahead with your next question. Oh, lost you again. I'm so sorry, caller, because we are running out of time. Maybe even to save the call, not for next week, but maybe the following week, because we will talk more in the weeks to come about wills trusts, other estate planning tools. Someone mentioned earlier, life insurance. We'll talk more about that. But next week, we're going to shift gears a little bit and talk about the home buyer seminar with Columbia Savings and Loan Association. And that we talked about it last week, but I think I gave some misinformation in terms of the date. So we are looking at Friday, March 15th. 12 p.m. and 5 p.m. at Columbia Savings and Loan Association, 2020 West Fond du Lac Avenue. Come on out for this seminar because you will learn how owning your home builds your general wealth, how banks look at credit, how to build better credit, types of mortgage loans and their benefits, and other useful tools that you'll need to know. So thank you so much. We hope to see you at the seminar. You can register at www.pwsb.bank/seminar. Please go ahead and register for this seminar, and we will look forward to seeing you there. We will have representatives of the loan department on next week that are going to give information about this. We'll pick up the estate planning discussions after that. There's a lot to talk about with that. So thank you so much.
I have a quick question for you. So let's just say it's midweek and I've got some questions and or concerns, and I maybe want to reach out and talk to you. How would someone get a hold of you in the event that they needed to talk about some of these things that you spoke about today?
Thank you, Debo. That's such a sound question. And I talk so much sometimes I don't think about that. You can reach me. I'm attorney Coral Plez. I own and operate the Plez Law Firm. And the number for my business is 414-247-9570. You can call that number. You can text that number. And sometimes I get a little bit busy, but I always do get back to people.
So do you do free consultation? Like everybody said, free consultation. What is free consultation?
A free consultation for me means about 10, 15 minutes on the phone to at least see if it's something that I can help you with.
Okay.
Yes, absolutely.
I have no more questions.
Okay, that's a great question. Thank you so much.
All right.
And thank you for joining us. Money Talks with Attorney Coral, sponsored by Columbia Savings and Loan. Thank you.
WNOV